Hey, good morning, Rod.
Good morning, Russ.
How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're here too on Small Towns Unscripted. One more time.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Nicole Turner. I'm Russ McClellan. Yeah, I appreciate you, and we become friends not that long ago.
No, it's kind of serendipity, but yeah, it's been fun just getting acquainted.
Yeah, and you're one of those guys. You've been here a few years now. You've been coming here a long time, but it's cool to meet people that have decided to make this home and are all in like you are for the community. So.
Yeah, I was like everybody else that has a story. I guess my family did their camping trips to the state park, and I had a sister who discovered the city park when she had gotten married, and she spent her whole summers living in the city park. And so I had that visitor vibe that I knew about. Never had it in my head that I would have a place or another place or be here full time. But gosh, it was in 2003 that a friend of mine who had the vision and had the idea that he wanted to be here, but that he also had a career on the west side of the state, he invited my wife and kids to his cabin for a weekend, and I think that's when we really got hooked. It was like, wow, there's just so much that you could have and enjoy here. And so we kind of just said, well, we'll sit back and we'll find a professional who can look around for us, and we did. And one day something popped up that we could afford, and I think that was in 2004 that we bought a small cabiny house on the South Shore, and that became our dedicated vacation weekend. I mean, can't tell you how many trips back and forth over the passes, but we loved every one, and each time we'd come over the crest of the hill there and looked at, and then just all that, it just all went away.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm a water guy. My wife, we decided that we have to be by water. We have to, whether it's an ocean or a stream, or we love that. And I didn't know if it was seeing the water after a long drive, but then I thought, no, it's a legit thing, that there's some kind of emotional. So we made a purchase in 3 years before we both retired in 2015 of a home. And then when we retired, we now have a place just kind of up by Pat and Mike's. We've been here, I think, 7 years full time now, so loving it, absolutely loving it.
And you hit the ground running. I mean, I want to get into all the things you're involved in, because you're the perfect example of someone that just assimilates and then gives back to the community, is involved in the community. And one of the things I've noticed about you, you're always in a good mood. Is that normal?
My wife wouldn't say so.
No, we won't tell her.
There's an outside Rod and inside Rod, she thinks. But no, I like to be happy, and I was fortunate in my work life. I tell people I hardly ever went to work. I almost always went to fun. And when I discovered that I wasn't going to fun for 18 months in a row, it was time to make a change. And I was really fortunate that I got to do that. So maybe that's part of the upbeat piece, but it's so much more fun to be smiling than it is to be frowning. So.
Yeah, joy's contagious too, just like pessimism and negativity.
Yeah.
Having an abundant mindset is beautiful, and having a scarcity mindset is painful. And when you're around people like that, it picks you up. And that's one of the things I've learned about the community center, which you're also, I believe, on the board, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful opportunity as well that I want to get into. But let's back up and talk about how you, where were you from originally? Where's your family from?
Well, okay, we'll go back at least just one little piece of generation, because I can trace that. My mom grew up in North Dakota, Fargo, North Dakota, I think. Yeah, pretty sure. But North Dakota. And my dad was born in Saskatchewan, but he wasn't ever a Canadian citizen. He probably could have been today if he had that, but his family was just passing through. So, but the story I know best is about my mom's family in North Dakota, and they were farmers, and they didn't know they were poor, but they were really poor, and they left there as a result of the Great Dust Bowl.
Oh.
And I have photos. I don't know how they got photos, but I have a photo of them with an old truck piled high with what little belongings they were bringing. They each had a pair of denim coveralls on, 7 kids and 2 parents, and as the story goes, they found their way to Washington and Lake Stevens, Washington, and I think set up a Army surplus tent in the backyard of a brother who had got here first and lived in that.
The original ADU.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, exactly.
There you go. I love it.
So anyway, they settled in Lake Stevens, and my dad's family had settled in Lake Stevens. And on his side, the story I know best is similar to one you tell about my grandmother, who was in Illinois and was heading to the better land of Oklahoma, of all places. They had heard about the sandy soil, and I didn't know they'd lose it in a storm later, but she came by covered wagon as well. And I'm blessed that I actually have the original diary that she kept her memories in on that trip in 1898. And so it's getting up there in terms of years now.
That's great that you have that. A lot of people don't have that. And that's hopefully what this podcast, the tech has changed, and now we can have the original stories from Rod Brooks and so many other people where before, if people did write their life down, which was, I can only imagine it was hard to do. I remember when I went to her house many years later. After her kids were grown and I was born, and she was an elderly woman, and we'd go there, and she would just reminisce and say, you guys have everything. I don't know what I could possibly give you. You have a full-size pencil, you've got a tablet, you have a new pair of jeans. And that was a big deal, because I can just imagine her on that trip with the little stubby pencil and trying to write down her thoughts. And boy, did she wrote, but didn't always use the best grammar or the best words, but she wrote, and it was fun. It's fun to have. So it's a selfless thing to do, right? Selfless for people to take the time. I'm sure that work was abundant and there was lots to do, and just to slow down and go, I'm going to take care of some future generations and tell this authentic story.
Yeah. So those two families, I never really understood exactly how my mom and dad came together, except for through school and living in the same community. Because my dad was a little bit older than my mom, I think 6-7 years older. And he had to quit school when he was in like 7th or 8th grade, because his father had passed, and he was one of the sons that could go out and work in the gardens as a farmer. They grew whatever they grew over there. Whether it was lettuce or whatever, they planted it, grew it, harvested it, and so he helped support the family. And another little interesting anecdote, I go through some of those old family papers, is I found love letters that he would be writing to my mom. Because when he was off season there, he was either in Cashmere or Wenatchee or Chelan picking apples.
Oh, yep.
And I've heard you talk about the picker cabins. Well, my dad lived in one of those. And he would talk about that, about, hey, I almost broke my neck today on some kind of a ladder that he wasn't familiar with, and all the stuff that people here grew up around, that he was a migrant worker of sorts, right? And so that all is part of my roots. I grew up in had to be a lower income family, maybe lower to middle, and thought we were rich. We had a house and we had a yard, and it was good. We never really lacked for what we needed to have fun, and we were sent out to play like many people all over the country, and told, hey, when the street lights come on, if we had a street light, to show up back home. And friends were always coming over. There was nobody who's making appointments to come to your house and stop in for dinner or stay overnight, or maybe we'd show up at their house, and our moms knew each other. It was a different time. But that's where my roots are at.
It's funny how that's changed too. You fast forward to today, if somebody's knocking on your door, we talk about it a lot. It's just a different time.
Yeah.
That would be kind of, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Was I supposed to have something ready for you, or no? I just stopped by to visit.
And then you're like, well, my house isn't ready for your guests. So.
Right. Or that at our house, and I grew up with this. My wife must have too. I know she did. That when people came over, whoever's house it was supposed to have food.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And out comes the food, and I always thought, well, how does this magic happen? You know, we don't have a lot of food. How did this happen?
It's always like a fruit cake or something.
Yeah, something.
Yeah,
It's this
fruit
pound
cake,
cake or
coffee cake, cookies, something.
Yeah, my mom was like that kind of. She worked full time at a bank too, but she managed to do it all, which is kind of weird when you think about it. She'd get up at 4 a.m., start ironing everything, you know, and iron the socks, iron the
Everything,
underwear,
yes.
iron the pants, go to work at a bank all day, come home, make the dinner, and then start washing all the I mean, my dad was also equally outside working in the apple orchard, but she made this wacky cake. It was a chocolate flat cake. And then the thing at our house, which was always shocking to people, like all my friends got adopted to this pattern of eating cake, and what we would do is cut this cake and you put it in a glass and then fill it full of milk.
Oh.
And so if you've not tried that, it's a little revolution in the cake business.
That sounds like a
So
new
now
brand.
all my
building
friends
up.
that went to my house growing up, we had a neighborhood out in Manson, and they're all that way now. They're all eating cake in a glass, and their spouse is like, "What are you doing?"
So you can have your cake and drink it too.
You can have your cake and drink it too. So we graduated from the fruit cake to the chocolate cake, whatever it
To
was.
the
we-
wacky cake?
We always had a wacky.
That's interesting. We had some of those that were staples, but my grandma at one point in her life came to live with us, my mom's mom, and she was always cooking and baking a lot. And the best part of what she made always was homemade buns or rolls, bread. And boy, when the house was lit up with that, and it was that old way, you create the dough from scratch, you knead the dough, you put it in a warm spot if you have one, and watch it rise, and then you dump it, push it. I can't do it, but I know what they did. And so when that was done, I still have memories of coming down, whether it was a school day or a weekend, and my dad would be sitting at the table, and there's a toaster there, some old toaster, and he'd be slicing those buns into toast size and then lather them up with butter, and that was our treat in the morning. It was like, wow, grandma's homemade bread and lots of butter,
So when you were growing up in Lake Stevens, is that where you stayed the whole time?
Well, I went through high school there, born through high school, and lived there and played sports there, and we weren't on the lake, but we weren't far from it. We were kind of like if you just lived a bike ride away from a beach, and that's what we did. We'd go hang out at the beach, and this beach had a ballpark. We'd play ball, and had a couple friends that had families of maybe their dad was a doctor or a businessman, and they had a property on the lake. It was rare that I knew somebody with a property on the lake, but we'd go to their place and play. So yeah, I grew up there, and I had a lot of cousins, a lot of family that had settled there. The joke was, if you're going to date someone seriously, you should go out of town because you're probably related.
Yeah, I've heard that joke a few times.
Exactly. And but I do remember that there was a year, probably when I was old enough to remember, 10 to 13 maybe, that the welcome to Lake Stevens sign, the official one the county gave out, changed, and it went from something like 750 to 1,200.
Oh boy.
And it didn't happen in one year, but they don't change the signs every year, right?
Yeah.
And I remember everybody was talking about, like, oh my God, there's 1,000 of us. There's 1,000 of us. And that was thought to be a big deal. And I go back there now, and it's not unlike people like yourself, Russ, who grew up here and whose parents grew up here, that if you can look back in time, well, there's 30,000 people there now in that little town of Lake Stevens, and there's big companies and big shopping centers, and it's not the same,
Right.
but it doesn't need to be the same. I have the memories, and
change
the
is
people who are
inevitable.
there now are going to look 10 years or 20 years or 30 years from now and talk about the change they experienced. So,
Yep, exactly.
We talk about how it's all relative.
yep.
And so when you were, did you go to college? And
Yeah, there's so much about my life is just serendipity. That, okay, so I lived in a neighborhood. My dad worked for the water department. And now when I think about it, I said, well, literally my dad was a ditch digger. That used to be the joke that, you're as poor as a ditch digger or something. No, he literally dug the ditches that put the pipe in the ground that brought water to indoor plumbing at your house. And he got up every morning and he put on steel-toed boots. why that sticks with me. I've written poems about it. I've written stories about those steel-toed boots. They went in the same place. He always made sure they were well oiled. He didn't replace the boots. He replaced the soles. I mean, he had steel-toed boots, and he worked hard. And then I looked to my neighbor on the left, and he worked for the telephone company. He put on steel-toed boots too. Mm-hmm. Neighbor on the other side, he worked for the electrical department, climbing up poles and put on steel-toed boots too. That was my world. And then I looked in the neighbor behind our house. He also worked for the telephone company, and he wore black wingtips and a pair of slacks. And I thought, wonder what he does. And he was an accountant. So I said, okay, that's my way out of this. I'm not putting on steel-toed boots.
Oh.
I'm going to be an accountant. And so that was that piece. Then, gosh, Russ, I've got so many. I'll just share, okay?
Yeah,
do with
please.
this as you want.
Yeah.
I remember as a teenager, one of the television commercials. It was a public service announcement that came on consistently. Was one for the United Negro College Fund. Is that Unison? No, yeah, that's what it was. And they talked about the importance of an education and to help the people who couldn't afford to go. And I thought, that does sound like a good idea, this education thing. Nobody in my family had ever been to college. And so I started working, I was about 12, 13, berry picking, maybe 10 before that. I was berry picking, and then I ended up cutting kindling, and then I ended up working in a grocery store. I worked on a gas station, but I never bought anything. I always put my money in the bank. And one year, I was a junior in high school, and my friend bought a brand new Mustang, brand spanking new. He was working as long as I was. And I remember my dad saying to me, just so you can do what you want, you've worked for the money, his Mustang will be gone in a few years. The education you've been saving for won't be. So that was his only advice. He had never been to college or he didn't finish high school.
Yeah.
Right, and so I went on, and I decided I wanted to go to college, and I made this really well-researched decision. I said, well, it's got to have good sports. So they don't have to have a good sports team. They just have to have good sports that they play. And so that had to be the Pac-8 at the time. Yeah. And the University of Washington was too close to home, and I couldn't afford out-of-state tuition. So I had never been to Pullman in my life, never even had any idea what happened there or why it was there. But I applied, I was accepted, and I didn't go there until it was time to go to college. I got in the car and I started driving. And a friend of mine was going to, and got about as far as Ellensburg and started looking for it. Because, gosh, we've driven 2 or 3 hours already,
Didn't have Google Maps quite yet.
How far away can this be? And then we realized we were almost to Idaho when we finally landed. But yeah, so I'm a Coug, really proud one, and bleed crimson, and loved every minute there on that campus.
Were you a fraternity brother?
Yeah, I was. There's another story. While I was waiting to go to college, I get a thing in the mail, and it says, hey, we're having a meet and greet on Whidbey Island. Oh. So it's in your area, not too far from home, an hour. And if you'd like to come and meet some of the people that'll be on campus with you, that'd be a good time. So I thought it was just going to be anybody who went to WSU. When I got there, I found out it was one fraternity. And the name of the fraternity was Alpha Gamma Rho. And I happened to like the guys. But I didn't have a big inventory to pick from. They were all from the same place.
Yeah.
I liked them. When I went over there to think about a fraternity, I went through Rush. I went to see all the houses. And whenever I got a little weary or got a little tired, I went back to AGR, the Alpha Gamma Rho house, because I knew the people a little tiny bit. Connection had been made. Important point.
Yep.
Connection. You have a place that you're familiar with. And I went back there and I ended up joining Alpha Gamma Rho. And it was only after I had to sign up that I understood that AGR, Alpha Gamma Rho, stood for agriculture.
Oh. Oh.
So it was an ag house. They didn't really want accountants.
Right.
And that's what I was going to school to be, right? And but I did, and I signed up, and it was ag econ. You could fake that, and I signed up for ag econ, I think, and and it turns out that those guys were more like the community I grew up in, agriculture oriented.
Mm-hmm.
That must be a part of why I had the comfort. And they were from places like Ritzville and Colfax and Waitsburg and Chelan and Wenatchee and Burlington and Cedar-Woolley and all the rural farming town guys.
Awesome.
So yeah, that still is a really special place.
It's funny how people make decisions in life, and you fast forward 20 years or whatever, and they must have really thought this through, and they must have had this incredible plan. And
No, but life makes more sense in reverse than it does going forward.
Well, and the whole accounting thing, I when you go to college, you take basic stuff the first maybe year or year and a half, and I was doing that, and I got a couple of business classes. I did well. I like numbers, but then I was starting to meet people too, and I saw there was other choices. Not everybody wore steel-toed boots, but you could be other things. And the epiphany for me was at some point when I looked at options and incomes a little bit closer, I concluded I'd rather make money than to count somebody else's. And
That's pretty smart, actually.
and I was starting to become interested in communications and broadcasting, and I had a friend who was in that program, and so that's what I did. I moved over to one of the best, it turns out, I didn't plan it, best communication schools in the country is Murrow's Communication Center at WSU. And I landed in that and got to be about a junior, second semester, and my advisor called me in, and I've been tracking with him the whole time, and he said, "Hey, Brooks, what are you gonna do with all these broadcast credits?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be the sports anchor, to be precise, on one of the 3 network affiliates in Seattle. There was only 3: ABC, CBS, and NBC. And then there's this upstart, Fox thing going on over there. Not Fox News like we know today, but Channel 13 was over there." And he looked at me, and just without even smiling, he says, "You ever notice that all those people have hair?" And they did back then, and I had a receding hairline already. And he said, I said, "What are you trying to do, burst my bubble?" And he said, "No." He said, "But how do you like Missoula? How do you like Bozeman? How do you like, Provo? How do you like these little small towns? That's where you're going to be most of the time. If you ever get a shot at the news anchor, that's how that's going to work." And he says, "I've just been watching you, and you're really good at doing it. Doing the writing, doing the selling, doing the creative work. Let somebody else be the announcer, man."
The talent.
On-air
talent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did my time on radio station at and I did all the fun stuff, and ended up coming out of school with a communications degree focused on advertising. Yeah. So that's where I spent my life.
Wow.
And then you just would work for other companies selling whatever they sold?
Well, it was, when I got out of college, I'd fallen in love. And her
Because you introduced the sororities at the same time.
Yeah, the sororities were part of the fraternity deal.
Came with a perk.
I didn't know it worked that way.
A really good selling point.
A few more girls than the 1,200 kids you had.
But I'd met my then fiance back when I was a sophomore, and we were engaged for 3 years, and her parents were tough and strict and traditional that you're not marrying anybody until you get out of college. None of this in college type stuff. And then we graduated, and then it was, and you got to have a job. So I started working hard to get a job, and where I landed was just 8 miles from home. And I started at the biggest places up and down the coast, and I kept coming down, and I finally drove over to Snohomish from Lake Stevens, 8 miles, and went to the local paper, and they interviewed me at spring break to be an ad salesman for the Snohomish Tribune. And I think they had about 8 pages a week. And not so different than the Chelan Mirror, to be honest. And they all seemed to like me, 3 owners. And they said, "Well, you graduate, come back, and we'll talk about it." And I said, "No, you hire me now. When I graduate, I come back and go to work." And they said, well, you go home, we'll think about it. And I did, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is it. If I want to get married, this is it. And it turned out to be it. And they called me and they hired me, and I came back and started out in 1975. They paid me $500 a month to sell ads for them. And we lived in an apartment, and rent was $120 a month. And my wife was a teacher, and she had a substitute, that's all she could get was a substitute job. And we did that for about a year, and then we found a little house in Snohomish that we could buy if she had a full-time job. And as luck would have it, somebody got pregnant in the school district and they needed a full-time replacement. And we bought a house in Snohomish that cost $26,500. It was a 3-bedroom rambler on a 1/4-acre lot. And it was all we could do. I mean, literally, the guy says, oh, but you didn't know you gotta have $250 down. That's your down payment on a 30-year loan. And the interest rates, this was 1978, it was getting like 14 to 18% interest. I didn't know anything about interest. Forget the accounting job. I didn't know anything about interest. And he said, if you can get me $250, we can get you this house on a 30-year loan, and you will be paying $248 a month. And by that time, I was making $600 a month. That's what's almost 50% of my income. And we did it.
It's funny how that 50% debt to income ratio is still pretty applicable.
Isn't it?
That's kind of the ceiling.
Yeah.
The numbers are a lot different.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's the thing. And, here we are, what's that, some 75 to 25, 50 years later. And I've got kids now and a grandchild coming up that's probably going to get close to where he's ready to get out on his own after college. And they can't even breathe those numbers. They can't imagine those numbers. They go, Grandpa, I can't get a used car for $26,500.
No, I was just having a conversation with my daughter, who's a doctor of audiology, doing great. She's really, really good at it. She makes a lot of money in selling hearing aids and diagnosing people. And her husband's now a cop. And I was talking to her about, being a doctor is not cheap. Student loan and 2 kids, and she's been renting, and I'm like, the rates have dropped a little bit. We were just talking about this morning. She's like, Dad, it seems daunting.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of money. The down's going to be tough. And I said, well, here's the thing. We had this conversation about sacrifice, because when you rent, you often can rent a pretty nice place for, almost as much in some cities as you're going to pay in a mortgage if you can figure out a way to get in.
Okay.
But then you're paying somebody else's mortgage, and they're gaining that equity. I said the challenge that we see in real estate is that it's hard to get, especially when they're established with kids and they got 3 or 4 bedrooms and 2-story homes that they're renting, to downgrade your expectations. And she's like, well, we need 4 bedrooms. I go, no, you don't. Here's the thing.
You want 4 bedrooms.
You want 4 bedrooms. This is part of the sacrifice. You have to go backwards in your expectations if you want to go forwards in time with equity. Or you're just going to continue to make somebody else equity. And in 5 years, which goes by like that, I said, I know you know this because my grandson's 7 and he was like 1 yesterday. So boom, if we can get you in the game over time, real estate is a great way to build some money, and then you can start stepping up. But the challenge is always about expectations. If it's, then I went through this conversation about look at the dirt, not the house. What everybody does is they look at the houses. Oh, that's a nice house. Now, they go online, and they'll start swiping, looking. I go, look at the neighborhoods, look at the dirt. Start studying the dirt the house is sitting on, and try to get the least expensive house in the nicest location. Even if you have to sacrifice a bedroom or sacrifice the quality of the house, over time that's sweat equity. And then I'm just telling you, sometimes you got to stay up late, sometimes you got to get up early, and over a period of time you start to build equity. But it is hard because that is it's a tough pill to swallow when you're like, why can't I just buy that house?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's
yeah.
expensive.
And when we did that purchase, we didn't have kids, and it had that three bedrooms, three tiny bedrooms. And we thought, well, this might actually be a long-term situation. And I think we were in it 4, 5, 6 years, and good things happened in our lives financially. Not great things, but good things. Got those increases and got that equity that you've just mentioned. And I think we bought a $48,000 house was our next one. And then the kind of the circus really started. It was career-wise, because I had the good fortune to meet a guy who was an entrepreneur and was involved in a very good chain of auto parts stores. Shucks Auto Supply was the name of it over on the west side. And I went to work for him. And I could tell a lot of stories about career, but the main one was I met a guy, another relationship. And when they sold Shucks to a bigger company, he bought a grocery chain, and he called me, QFC. He called me, and he said, "I need you."
Wow. Yeah.
And so I went to work for him there. And then I found out I really didn't enjoy the grocery business, and I talked to him, and he said, "Well, you know, go back to the auto parts if you want." And I did, and that had been in Phoenix. That they had moved by that time to Phoenix. The larger company moved them there. They had me back, and I worked there for 2 or 3 years. And then he called me again. The first guy, he called me. He said, "Hey, we're moving inside. Our stockholders in Egghead Software, and we need you." And I'm okay. So I moved back to Washington, and that worked out for a while. And then it didn't. And I ended up looking for a job. He didn't have one. I was looking for a job, and I ended up going to work for WordPerfect in Utah. So moved the family to Utah. Never been to Utah before. Moved the family to Utah, and worked there for 2 or 3 years. And he called one more time, and he said, "Hey, now we've got a startup, and this is where you can really hit the home run if it works. It's called Coinstar. We make a box that people pour their change into."
Yeah.
And we take some of it, and then they get a receipt, and they go get money at the cash register. And I went, I'm trying to envision this.
Sounds like quite a guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
That guy's an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
101.
and so I went there, and the point of all that was that, again, a relationship, having a skill set that's respected. We had mutual respect, and not losing sight of what was the game. But the other side was I was chasing the scorecard that you've talked about. I've heard you talk about of there's dollar signs on a scoreboard someplace, and the bigger the number, the better you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And I was chasing that, and I had a family life where my wife, college sweetheart that I'd met, she was raising by that time 4 kids, and going wherever I went, and you grow apart, and you're going this way on a career path that's flying all over the world. For WordPerfect, I was flying to all the different countries you could probably list, and overseeing that. For Coinstar, I was traveling all over the United States, taking them from 50 machines to 5,000 machines installed in grocery stores, and so I wasn't home a lot. And looking back, I'm leaving out a bunch, but looking back, I'm saying, you know, Rod, you spent way too much time on corporate ladders, not enough time on playground ladders. And that biggest finding is why I have the situation I'm in, where I now have a second wife. We've been married for 25 years, Cindy and I, so that was a real blessing. But it cost me the family that I always was thinking these dollar signs were going to provide for, and did.
Yeah.
But quite a change. So you get a little wisdom the more years you put under your belt, I think, and look back at it.
Well, it's a consummate challenge for everybody, especially now where there are so many people grinding just to make ends meet, and there are more and more demands of time, which is that one resource that is very difficult to get back.
Yeah.
And I found myself in the same situation where I was looking down and in all the time and very rarely up and out. So whether it was seeing economies change or whether it was seeing my relationship change, it's really easy to grow apart. It's really easy to wake up one day and go, this is all it is? You know, that's what happened to me. It was like I went around the world in 2005 going, it was a solid market. We were smoking hot, doing a deal a day in real estate. But I was just like not fulfilled. And I thought success was that scoreboard I talk about, like a football game. If I've got those numbers, then I'm successful. And if I'm successful, I'll have joy and fulfillment. I thought they were all linked. That was a wake-up call. They're not linked necessarily. They can be. I mean, if you're fortunate enough, and you can, I know guys that have done it, and you know they were wise. They got it, you know, and in time, wisdom can come through a lot of things, but scar tissue is one of them.
Yeah, because you're right. And that's not to say that the benefits of those corporate ladders weren't appreciated or joyful or meaningful or part of the reason we're here.
Right.
But there's a cost that comes with them.
With everything.
And I think that's the lesson that you try to pass on when you're talking about those stories. One of the things it did for me, and kind of one of the things that connects me to the community here, is that when we knew we were going to move over here, and we'd purchased the forever home, but we weren't retired yet, I started looking for what could be, you know, when I got here, because I didn't want to come and just sit in a house.
It's a good point to interject real quick. I've met a lot of people that have had that plan for a long time.
To come here and retire?
Come here and retire. They buy a second home. They eventually sell their primary. They move here. And then they're bored. And then their marriage starts.
Oh.
Because now for the first time, if both of the couples were working, both people as a couple were working apart and raising kids, 100 miles an hour, and then one day, you're retired.
Yeah, and see, my wife Cindy was a full-time pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital in Seattle, and so she was engaged all the time in stress areas too. I was doing the corporate thing. So you're right. We kind of came to it. I retired 1 year before she did, and we were still living in Sammamish full-time, and so I had a little bit of a downgrade. But it took a long time to really get it. So I did start looking ahead to see what could be possible. And I also had this wisdom now about the corporate ladders and playground ladders. And so I said, I'm going to start something. I'm going to start this thing that I called the Grandpa Project. And as a marketer and been around, I knew what I needed. And, so I got the business cards, I got the website, I got the business plan, I got the big ideas. And then I said, now how are you going to deploy this? And so I started doing stories, kind of like this, only in written form for my website. All the different grandpa stories people would share about having one or not having one, or what they got from their grandpa. And then I started looking at, well, what else could I do? I thought, I think I'd like to do a grandpa camp. A grandpa camp where kids and a grandpa come and just have a good time for a weekend or a day. And so somehow I met, probably someone you know well, I met Sarah Barnes. And she was one of the founders of Thrive Chelan Valley.
Right.
Yeah.
And she started telling me about their mission about helping kids. And I said, well, that's what I'm trying to do with grandpas. And it brought us together in an excited and mutually beneficial way where I ended up joining their board before I even got here full time.
That's awesome.
And they helped me, and we did our first Grandpa Camp was at the Ruby Theater.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, and I rented the whole theater, and I got a real wholesome movie, and I said, bring a kid. Any man who brings a kid, doesn't have to be your own, act like a grandpa. And we didn't fill the place up. I think we had 25, 35 people, not very many, but we had a good time. And it was a start. And then I started looking for other men who wanted to be volunteer grandpas. And I got about a dozen, and we did Grandpas in the Classroom at Morgan Owings. And I think that I was here full time by then. And we would take these grandpas into a teacher's classroom, one for each, and the teacher adopted the grandpa, and they set their own schedule, and they went in and they either read to the kids, or they told stories of their life, or they did artwork, or anything you could do in a classroom. And it was getting bigger. We did it 2 years. They loved us, and we loved doing it. And that magic word, COVID, shut the school system down for guests and kids too. And so we couldn't do it. And
let me stop you there for a second, because I think this is amazing. I bet you learned through that process a lot from the kids too.
Oh yeah, and we, you know, they just want you, and they're all about having an exchange. But what they would tell us about, you know, what was going on in their life, or what they're excited about doing next weekend, or they're looking forward to a vacation, or, you know, just the different things. Did learn a lot, and learned a lot about hardships that they were facing in some of the families and some of the community. I also learned about the people who had come from someplace else and they weren't having a hard time making a friend because they were from somewhere else. You know, I hate that one story. The story about, you know, you can't really be a friend if you're new here because we're not sure you're going to stay here.
Yeah.
And that too young to hear that.
Right.
You know, but yeah, we had a good time, and yeah, and then the COVID thing happened, and tried to do some juggling. The first year, those same men and I did online storytelling. So we would read a story, and I'd send it to the classroom through the teachers, and then we did Grandpa Grams. So if you signed up and gave us your home address, and we had to get the parents' permission, we would write you a postcard every month and stay in touch with you. And of course, that's kind of when all the wheels came off. You know, the nonprofits were struggling, money wasn't available. Thrive was going a direction to really satisfy some other not more important, but most important needs, the basic needs of a kid. And I learned that I'd been the boss for so long in my corporate life, and I had 40 people on a marketing team, that I could get anything done. But when you're all by yourself, and you're not only the idea guy and the creative guy, but you're also the implementer guy.
Yeah, you're the executor too.
Yeah, you realize that, oh, I should have maybe been grateful for all that help.
Yeah, you think about that. I've only been self-employed, you know, in my adult life, and as a small business, and I've met a lot of guys that have had corporate lives and Fortune 500 companies, and I said, I'm not sure, I've never done that, but I have a feeling that they're challenging. But being your own boss and being a small business, you know, I grew up with an apple orchardist.
Yeah.
You're every department.
Yeah. Oh, I was afraid to be that, Russ. I applaud you. I have a lot of respect for people like yourself. I really want to say that and honor that for all of our community that are independent, all independent business people. I had an opportunity at some point. I had hired an advertising agency, and they did a bang-up job for all the companies that I was in. So I took them with me on each one of these moves, and they got more and more and more integrated and more revenue, and they were mostly about media buying. That's what they were mostly about. And at one point, the principal brought my wife and I in and said, I am willing to give you 51% of the business if you stop what you're doing in your corporate world and become my partner. And you don't have to buy in, you just have to bring the business.
Sweat equity. Yeah.
And I looked and I said, man, healthcare? Is there healthcare involved with this package? I have 4 kids, or 3 kids, I guess. And we went all through the whole thing, and I said, well, how do you pay yourself? Well, it comes out of the commissions we get from doing the media. And I said, well, yeah, but I'm the guy who gives you the money to buy the media. So if I'm on the inside, you won't have me on the outside. And I'm your best customer. So you might not really want me in here. But I didn't have the courage. I couldn't pull the trigger. Yeah. And they went on to do great things, but it does. Thank you. Well, it takes gumption, it takes dedication, and it takes a little bit of crazy.
A little bit. I think a little bit more, a lot of crazy, and a little bit of everything else.
Well, you got to be willing to live with the worst case scenario, and then move on. You know, and fortunately in America, you know, you can do that if you're into it. But it's a lot of stress. You know, I remember my dad just. You know, and now the apple farms are, you know, they're struggling too. I mean, it's tough, but it's always been a tough game where you see a cloud come over, and if you're doing everything right and the markets are good and your fruit looks perfect, I mean, farmers are the ultimate entrepreneurs because that gray cloud can just take you out with a hailstorm in one day. You know that. Yeah. And so he used to say, I used to give him a hard time. I'm like, hey, we should go to Las Vegas and have a trip down there. He goes, why? gamble every day. I don't need to go to Vegas. I'm an apple farmer. I'm like, yeah, good point. And then he always used to say, if I won the lotto, Russ, I'd just farm till it was all gone. So I was just, it's a lifestyle, I think there's so many small businesses that.
And a pride thing.
Yeah, they know that there's some pluses and minuses to everything, right?
I was talking to a woman this morning who you probably know, and she organized a knitting circle over at the community center.
Nice.
They meet every Tuesday morning. So I'm talking to her to get her story.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing stories too.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, my grandkids are fourth generation here. Her husband's the fire chief over in Manson.
Mm-hmm.
And but they used to be apple farmers. And she told me a story that I hadn't heard that you lived. She said one year we worked really, really hard like always. And we sent our last shipment to the, what would it be, the storage area or whatever, whoever the one that was buying from them.
Yeah.
And we got home, and a week later, we didn't get a check. We got a bill.
Yeah.
We owed them money after we sent all our apples there.
Sad truth.
That just...
And so many things in farming, it's a whole nother topic, right? And there's guys that are experts in what's going on, but it's always been the fact that you're going to take all the risk as a small apple farmer, small farmer in general, and you're the last one to eat. You're the last one to get paid. Everybody gets paid from packing, shipping, selling, picking all the crew to get it there, and then there's a whole bunch of expenses, and if there's not enough at the end, you can get a bill. And it's a reality, and it's very... it's very challenging. There's a lot of reasons why, I think, but, I think it's important in time that we have some people on our podcast here that are really experts in what's going on.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions that often people might have to sell their land or sell their orchard, and somehow they're a sellout.
Oh, that they're giving up, or they're quitters.
Yeah. Like they don't realize, a lot of people, if you're not in the business, why would you? You don't realize how difficult it is and how financially devastating it can be and how fast it can happen. And it's not, most of the time, it's not because people want to sell.
Mm-mm.
But when they have to sell, one of the things that the vineyards did for us in that late 90s, early 2000s was it added an agricultural buyer that could diversify into another industry and still have it green for the community. Mm-hmm. So although we may not like the idea of what tourism has become or the amount of people that 40 plus tasting rooms and wineries bring, I often remind people, if you go back to 2000, as a crop year of 98, I believe, was really devastating from a price of the commodity. If we wouldn't have had that idea, that ag tourism concept that was kind of invented, and there was no tasting rooms at that point, or very few, then we would have had a very different landscape. You would have seen destitute. So many people went under in the late 90s with the first major shift, but NAFTA had a lot to do with that. The consolidation of the domestic buyers had a lot to do with that, and the fact that the farmers are very proud. I give seminars. I've given many, many seminars, well over 100 in Seattle and up and down I-5. And one of the things I do is I tell the story about, I have a slideshow presentation I wrote, and I show where this town once was, how we got here, where are we now, and then where are we maybe going based on what we know. And it's kind of historical in its context. And we go through all of these challenges in various times. But in the late 90s, there was some pretty devastating, drastic changes that happened. And so many people went out of business. But if it wasn't for those vineyard investors, it would be different. So sometimes it's not what it once was. And change is hard. And it was very hard for those individual farmers. I was one of them with my dad. But it was an option, and it's good to have options for those people. And sadly, now you fast forward, and there's so many regulations, from lead arsenic issues to all of the development bureaucracy that's involved now, that a lot of people that are facing the same adversity at a higher level now, which this last couple of years is really kind of the pinnacle of oversupply. For lack, it's a very complex subject. That's why I said we should get somebody that really can tell the story. But what almost is happening is history's kind of continue to repeat itself, where the small farmer, at least in this state and in this game, and with the land values being what they are, because there's more investment capital coming constantly, it's just very, very, very difficult. And,
Wow.
and there should be I just always encourage people to have empathy at the front of what they're thinking when they see a farmer that has to sell, because I can almost tell you, well, I can tell you from experience, it's a very, very difficult emotional experience to go through that and to quote unquote give up.
Mm-hmm.
But when you
Well,
give
and
up,
then the what's next for them? I mean, because a lot of them, that's
Yeah.
all they know.
that's all they know.
Yeah, and it's been in their families, or they've done it for
Yeah.
30, 40, 50
So I
years.
just always want to bring that up, just from the context. I went through it and it was challenging, and there's a lot of arrows get thrown at you. And but if you have empathy for people and you get to know their story a little bit deeper, you might find that this isn't what they want.
Yeah.
This is what they have to do, and it's challenging. So it would be fun, but that presentation I wrote is more accurate today than it was 20 years
I was going to ask you, how was the crystal ball part when you said this is what it's going to be? Has that played out?
It has, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, and fortunately in some others. You know, growth is inevitable, and the challenging part is coming together as a community. And hopefully this podcast is one little tiny piece to help people get to know each other, story instead of each other. And then hopefully as a community with involvement, you can help create smart growth or channel growth, and kind of avoid that urban sprawl, for lack of a better word, where it's kind of unbridled. But it's a balance, right? You can be over restricted, and then the only people that can afford it are the wealthy. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think there's a lot of good people involved, but it takes community, right? I
Right.
mean, and if you want to avoid polarization and you want to kind of be a part of it, it takes education, it takes information, and to be curious. I mean, I think that's what I try to encourage people the most is, if you don't like something, instead of just slapping it with judgment and then jumping to a conclusion, start from a curious mind.
Mm-hmm.
Start by asking questions. If you're truly passionate about it, if you're so passionate you want to go slam somebody on social media over something, before you do that, maybe just take a deep breath, a step back, and ask some questions. And then maybe, if you still feel that way, slam them.
Yeah, and try to hear the answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, try to listen while you're
Yeah.
hearing too. You know.
Yeah. And hopefully, if everybody does just a little bit of that, together, it's not going to be so daunting. It can be all of us just sharing stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it'll be interesting to see too, like with the ag lands and stuff, how the wine industry is going to be. I mean, 46 wineries we had last year,
Something like that. It's a
right?
lot.
And
yeah.
it's like, well, how well are they doing? And hopefully they can still keep thriving. Otherwise, what are we going to do with all the land?
These are good questions.
Yep.
Especially, one of the things that is difficult, and I talk about it a lot, it's what I do for a living, right? So the regulatory agencies sometimes have so much power that it creates an unpredictable investment environment, which essentially is a limiting factor. If you have inventory that can't come to the market in a reasonable period of time or with reasonable predictability, then consequently you'll see less and less opportunity for
Sure.
housing. Sometimes people feel like, well, there's not affordable housing because they just don't want it. Like an investor just doesn't want to do that. They make more money building multi-million-dollar homes. But often in the reality is, when you limit the predictability, you limit the investment capital. And those investors that would maybe invest in your community go elsewhere, where there's less regulation. Now, I'm not saying no regulation, because then you do get kind of out of control, unbridled growth that can be a major problem. So there's this fine balance, and I often see, we talk about the pendulum swinging politically and obviously
socially and just anything, honestly.
Yeah. So it's really about that information, and when the only people that show up with burning torches and pitchforks at every meeting are, in my opinion, are focused from a nefarious perspective, in my opinion, where not everybody, but there's definitely a few, all they want is to stop every house from being built. Now, I get that, because you don't like the traffic and you don't like the town to change. On the other hand, if you in the same paragraph talk to me or really anybody, and you say, hey, I don't want to see another house built, but why are these damn houses so expensive? Well, that's Econ 101. I mean, supply and demand. So we have to have a balance in not only demand, and demand is more difficult to balance.
Right.
Because you live in a beautiful place. So we have 5 million people who live 3 hours away, in the rain. And then you have, I have my house and I have my swimming pool and I have, not in my backyard.
Yeah, so close the door behind me.
So somewhere in the middle, we can't have no growth over the economy. Trickle-down economics is another econ term that is very real. That creates jobs, and those jobs create other jobs. Well, if you stop growth, then you're going to find yourself living in a very, very, very expensive place, way more than it is now.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I'm that guy, that they discovered this beautiful place and vacationed here, then decided I buy a place to vacation in, then decided to live here.
Yeah.
And I heard things, and I was like really kind of surprised, but not totally, that, well, you're one of those people that made some money somewhere else, and now you can come in here and take something that somebody else might have had it not been you. And you'll never be local, as I heard, because you got to have 3 generations here at least, is what the story I heard. Yesterday I heard one that you got to have 10 winters under your belt before you're local. Not summers, winters. You got to do winters.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I haven't heard that one before. That's good.
I thought that was interesting.
We're quantifying it now.
And
I love it.
And I'll tell you, to be honest, it doesn't really hurt. Like, I'm not emotionally drained by it, but it's like, really? I thought this was a really friendly place, and you're telling me I can't be part of it? And so that's kind of why, like this year, my wife found her little niche. She decided she really wanted to volunteer and give back through Chelan Valley Hope. And she has always had a heart for people who are disadvantaged or homeless or whatever. And I 3 or 4 years ago, after my grandpa project kind of died at the COVID timeline, I'm going to say it's got to go through recovery. I think I still have enough that maybe someday it'll come back to life again. But then I started helping. I was introduced to Brooke Isaac, and she'd been here for a long time. Family'd been here. She went away, did some business things, came back, and she was helping Thrive. And I met her, and she said, "Hey, we could really use some of your marketing strategy, thinking, and help, and even just little doing things." And so about 3 or 4 years ago, I said, I think that fits. I'm a marketer. I've always gone to fun. I like doing it, so I can do it for you. And we started that, and then fast forward to this year, and she said, "We'd love to have you join us on the board." And I did that for the community center, and I'm finding that sweet spot for us. My wife has found hers, I've found mine, where it says, okay, this is how locals act. This is how they get together with other people, and they have common goals, and they contribute, and you build things that you and your family aren't the sole winners with. You build it that other people could come and enjoy it.
Yeah. And
that's been really fun. I didn't kind of imagine it was going to be as fun as it's been. It's really, really fun, and it's rewarding, and it's keeps me engaged.
Yeah, that's where
that's
I kind of look at it as a definitional thing. Where if you want to define a local, I'm not into it. I'm into contribution. I'm into helping each other. I'm into being curious. And if you want to, if you're working your butt off and someone moves here, for whatever reason, they have the resources, maybe they worked a career like you that has the time and the energy to do something that you're not doing if you're the one working your ass off here, maybe we should focus on involvement and not time.
Right.
Maybe we should focus on
inclusion instead of separation.
Yeah. Maybe we should focus on combining strengths to achieve a common goal, like a better community that is working together. Yeah. And that's the thing that people, maybe the town isn't, I had like 22 kids, and Brooke and I were in the same grade, K through 12, right? I think there were 16 of us K through 12. Okay, well, it's not the same as 1987 when we graduated high school in Manson, but if it's going to grow and we can attract people that want to give back and that have the time and energy to give back and are less judgmental as well, because it just creates a polarization. You know, if I'm going to judge you, you're going to judge me back. I mean, this is not what we need to be doing. And so this whole idea that there's a diverse group of people that all bring something to the table. They all have a story, they all have a history, they all have a background, and they have this one thing in common: they love this place.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like that's a pretty damn strong foundation.
That's a pretty good hometown.
Pretty good
That's
hometown.
a pretty good place.
And
Yeah.
we're very, very lucky, because if you want to go other places, you can look that don't have big bathtubs out back and they don't have that sunshine thing looking at us, these mountains and lakes and streams. Guess what? They're not doing well. The streets are boarded up. The economy kind of sucks. So this diversified economic balance helps everyone.
Right.
So, yeah, is everybody a nice guy? No. But not all the fifth generation locals are nice guys either. Some of those guys should leave. I mean, it works both ways. So to me, it's just an inclusivity concept that is just common sense.
Yeah.
It's not going to, you cannot stop it, or then you have a lot of other problems too. You just have to work together to channel it in the best way you can. And what you've done is so admirable. I mean, just to come up with a grandpa for kids or whatever, that's just a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's just from my heart. That one is
Yeah.
just like, I didn't know either of my grandpas. They both passed away before I was born. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I was missing out. I didn't even really know how to be a grandpa. I really didn't, because I'd never been one, and I never had one. And I thought, wow, there's a gap here. And so the grandpa stories that I was generating, they helped inform me in my pursuit of grandpa. When my, you know, one of the nice things about having a house on the lake right here in our little beautiful area is none of my kids, our blended family of 7 kids, not one of them lives in Washington.
Oh, wow.
There's one in Oregon, in Utah, in New Mexico, Florida, Pennsylvania, and 2 in Michigan.
Wow.
And so we have a place, something that attracts some of them
magnet.
back home.
Yeah.
Like maybe a kid magnet or now a grandkid magnet. And
Now, do you have grandkids too?
I have what do I have? 10 grandkids
Wow.
from just 4 of our children, 4 of the 7 children, and they range from 22 to 6 months.
Wow.
And
Congrats.
the 22-year-old, he's been here every year of his life, except 2, when he was doing some service for his church. And last year, he called me and he said, "Grandpa, I have a chance." He's a Division I baseball player at college. And he says, "I have a chance to play for the Wenatchee Apple Sox. Could I live with you?" And I went, "Tomorrow."
Yeah, you're like, please.
Yeah, yes. And
Is he on it now, or is he?
yeah, he was on it this last season,
Nice.
and they offered him. He did well enough. They said, "Hey, you don't even have to apply to come back if you want next year." And he's given that thought because while he was here this summer, he met a young woman that has given him another reason to come back and visit.
I want to go to the games with you if he's playing. Let's go. I want to go with you and watch him.
Yeah, I will. He's a pitcher. He does really well, and
awesome.
so we'll see. We'll see how that all goes. But yes, it's nice to have them all come back, and that's the part of the year that I never would get bored because I'm busy. I'm the host and the grandpa and all of that. But when they would come, because of the Grandpa Project, I paused and I said, everyone that comes, I'm going to have a one-on-one grandpa date with. And we went tubing, one time we went fishing, one time we went to get a hamburger, whatever it was that they wanted to do. I went and got my nails done for the first time with my 2 granddaughters. They wanted to do that, and that to me is what the memory. And they can say they came to the lake, but they're going to remember the grandpa date.
Yeah.
I bet it was when you had it going before COVID. I bet the gentlemen that were the grandpas were getting as much or more out of it than the kids.
Oh,
I talked to 2 of the teachers, and they said that their grandpa is still in contact with them independently and just doing it. One, Angela Collins is the new executive director at the Boys and Girls Club. She was one of my teachers, one of the teachers in the school that had a grandpa. She said her grandpa now comes up there and reads. So it's got legs.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Let's if we can, let's transition, because this is unique timing for the community center.
Yeah.
And maybe you could explain for people that haven't heard about the community center and what's going on financially through the end of the year, because this episode's going to
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that'll be helpful. That'd be really helpful. Thanks for asking. Well, the community center we're really proud of what it's already is. It's been done so that there's a part of the building that's completed, that has everything from the coffee shop to office spaces to multi-purpose rooms to a lobby to a kids play area. In my hometown of Lake Stevens, that was enough. That would have been a thrill. We didn't have that. But even more so, there's that Boys and Girls Club upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And we built the shell of a gymnasium while we were building the facility, but didn't have the financial resources to complete it. Now that gymnasium is big enough for 2 practice courts or 1 full-size court, volleyball courts. It has a performing arts stage. It has audio-visual that is going to be to die for little concerts or speeches or conferences. Mm. And we were fortunate that your friend, classmate Brooke, was nurturing a relationship. She had become friends, and I don't know how long ago, but she had friendships in the community for sure, and one of them wanted a tour of what she was working on.
Just random.
Yep. Brooke is the president of the board, has been involved from the beginning. She offered her friend, a tour, and her friend and her husband came, and they saw the whole thing. And they went to the gym, and I remember she said he asked her, "What's it going to take to finish this gym? It's so impressive, but it's so empty."
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, it's going to take about $4 million." Oh, okay, I can see why it's not done. And so they left, and about 3 hours later, she said, I think it was 3 hours, I don't know for sure, they called and said, okay, let's finish the gym. And he donated $4 million.
Sheesh.
And comes in over the schedule of the construction.
And I remember her at the gala that I attended. He doesn't live here full time either.
No, he's got a home here.
Yeah.
He doesn't live here full time. He's a very successful entrepreneur, sold his business, I don't know enough about him to discuss him.
Right.
But I do know that I've met him, and
Pretty
he is
amazing.
a very genuine, heartfelt,
Obviously.
community-guided
Yeah.
donor. Because there's a PS. And the PS is what you were asking about. He also said, and you know what? I know that you have other needs than this gym. I know there's some debt that still exists on the first part of the building. I know that there's anticipation of some other amenities, everything from pickleball to swimming pools to all the things that were part of the master plan.
Yeah.
Still are. He said, I'm going to put up another $2 million if you raise $2 million. We will match every dollar that you raise in the fourth quarter.
Incredible.
And as of today, because of the gala, thanks for coming, the gala and contributions since then, we're right around 800,000. So
That's
that
great.
turns into 1.6.
Yeah, and that's been like a month.
Yeah, October 4th was when that gala was. So in 6 weeks, we've raised about $800,000.
That's incredible.
And we've got about 6 weeks left.
Yeah.
And we've got people we're talking to, some with lots of zeros, but we like the ones that have to have a 0 or 2 or 3 also, because it takes all of us. Some people think, well, I mean, I know you got 4 million, I know you got 2 million, and I got 100,000. I can't be that. You know what? We need your 50. We need your 100.
Yeah.
God bless you if we could have your 1,000, because that's what it's going to take to not only build it, but to continue to operate it.
Yeah, and I think even if it's not the money, we talked about that when we talked last time.
Yep.
If you watch this and you want to learn about it, just go there. And then you can be involved, not with money, but maybe you tell a couple people.
Yep.
And maybe the couple people they tell a couple people, and maybe they tell a couple people, and maybe one of these person has $1,000,
Yeah.
or maybe they have 100.
And that's how it works.
Whatever it is.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. And one of my roles in this wild, crazy career was I was the chairman of an organization called the Word of Mouth Marketing Association, a national organization that talked about the value of storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
Said, know your customers, know your people, give them something to talk about, and make it easy to share.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in a way doing that right now. You're giving us something to talk about, and you're making it easy to share. That's what we're doing. I'm visiting with people of all connection points at the community center. Today, this week alone, I've talked to a lady who gives aerobic type classes in the multi-purpose rooms. I met a woman this morning who organized a knitting circle that meets in the lobby. I met two women, one that owns the fitness center, one that owns Divine Coffee Shop, and how they got there. Construction people, all the people who've had a hand in it, and the common denominator that when I said, what would you tell someone who's leaning into a gift? They say, come here, walk in the door, ask for a tour or walk around yourself, no one will stop you. And if after you leave, your heart connects to your wallet, great.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, tell somebody what you really saw.
Yeah, here, don't do what I did. And what I did was make assumptions. Don't do that. Get curious. Because as soon as I figured it out, I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. The people like yourself and Brooke and so many other people, you know, we had Kyle on the podcast and all his involvement, all the way to Chris's barbershop that we, I mean, they were so dedicated, not for a year or two, for many, many years, and have been through many, many, iterations of this idea and this mission. And then when I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard that the Boys and Girls Club has something like 500 kids.
Yeah,
That's
I know
incredible.
They've served or touched about 500 because they took over on behalf of, I think it was the City of Chelan, might have been Manson too, but I think it was City of Chelan. They took over their sports program, AAU program.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And in return, the city made some financial gifts to help them outfit the Boys and Girls Club. So those kids that used to play the AAU and the city teams, the kids who signed up for their fall golf program, the kids who come up there for their after-school program, they have a deal with the Manson School District because they no longer have a 5-day school week. They only have a 4-day, and people need daycare.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they have a very low rate for like $25 for a full day of daycare if your kid needs it on Friday. They bus them from the center to the school, from the school to the center. I mean, my gosh, we didn't anticipate that when we built the building or when we had this on a piece of paper that said, oh, this is how the schools are going to be and how the cities are going to be. Probably the most brilliant part from me looking at what the people before me did was finding a way to work a 3-way deal to get on the property they're on.
Yeah.
You said look at the dirt.
Yeah.
It was the dirt that I think impresses me the most because the folks who own and operate the lookout owned the land. They were in discussions with the Chelan Valley Housing Trust to put low-income homes on part of it, 3 acres.
Yeah.
And we had acreage out by Chelan Falls that we had purchased.
By the warehouses.
Yeah. And together, through collaboration and curiosity and enterprising ideation, I guess, they did a swap and a purchase that put the trust in a place where they could really afford to build low-income housing, and it made sense. The community center ended up with 6 acres for a campus to put the building, and the lookout was able to say, hey, over at some point in time, we'll be able to have meetings in the community center for our residents. They'll be able to go down for coffee. They'll be able to use the gymnasium. They can join the fitness center. And they don't have those amenities.
Yeah, and they donated the land. So,
yes.
regardless of how you feel about the lookout, I mean, not everybody likes it. But I'll tell you what, look at the tax base and how what it does for all the schools. Look at what they just did. That's an example of maybe it's not your perfect situation for you as an individual. Maybe you would like to see something else.
Or nothing.
Like apples. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
But if you're going to do something, maybe there's a benefit that you can also think about. Now, you don't have to like it, but you can like what they did.
Yes, and that's really, so where I was going with that is because it's where it is, I call it a bridge. It's a bridge between 2 hometowns.
Yep.
It's a bridge that exists to bring 2 ethnicities together, the Hispanic community and the Caucasians and all the difference. And it's a bridge. it can be a bridge between red and blue activists, and it's just a center for the whole community.
Yeah.
And when you walk in, some of that stuff just goes away.
Yeah.
Some of that just goes. I talked to one of the businesses in there, and they said, "Hey, we had 2 businesses, one in each community. They were the fitness center, and they were doing well in both. They had an opportunity to move into the community center. They closed both, moved in, said we have more members now, we're doing more business now, and we enjoy it more now.
Yeah.
Because we're on the bridge between 2 wonderful
Well, if you take it one
towns.
step further, just the AU alone, you're also helping all the other smaller communities around, all the little towns around. So it's not even just Lake Chelan and Manson.
Right.
You know, when you're doing AU, you're bringing in teams,
Yep.
ragtag teams from all over the place. I mean, and it's a huge, it goes because of that program, and then a place and a facility to have that once the gym is built, especially. Now you're integrating friendships.
Right.
And there's nothing better than, I mean, Brooke's husband, Scott, and I were rivals in sports. He was a Coulee City guy, right?
Okay.
But we're friends, and so you build these friendships and this competition where you can, again, combine those strengths as kids to achieve the common goal. And then all of a sudden, everybody's benefiting. It's not a judgment thing where, only you get that.
Well, yeah, there's too much separation and isolation at this point. Everybody
I love
now,
it.
the pendulum's swinging back to community and being together in any way we can find it.
I went over there this morning to do some business, and had about a half hour before we sat down. I went home, and my wife said, "What's up?" I said, "I gotta tell you, it's just so energizing." I watched. There's some people doing some homeschooling there today. They bring their little kid down, they teach them a lesson, let them play in the children's play area for a break. Then afterward, they go over and they get a smoothie or whatever. There's women knitting in there. There's some EMTs sitting there having coffee together. I walk down the hall, and there's 25 senior citizens doing chair aerobics in a class. I mean, it just, people don't know that's going on.
Yeah, and it took a lot of effort to get to this point. So it's fantastic that you've been involved in
It's been fun.
All the things that are happening. And again, tell somebody, get curious, go say hi down there.
We got 6 more weeks.
You can see Mary Bell.
Exactly.
Mary Bell's as nice as any human on planet Earth. So Mary Bell will give you a tour if you
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just want to welcome you. We want to show you around, and we hope you like what you see.
Yeah, and participate any way you can.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and just get
Support
curious.
the businesses in there and all that stuff too.
Yeah, so you're having a good time, and you're loving living in Chelan. Your wife loves it.
I am. We this is home for us. It's our home, and we love it. There's things we miss about our other life, but this far and away exceeds us. So it is, like you said, there's trade-offs.
Well, here's my new rule for you. It's not 10 winters, it's 20 summers.
20 summers, okay.
You might have already made it.
You want me to play that?
I think I made it.
You're in, baby.
Look at you go.
Well, Rod, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I could talk
thank you
for
so
an
much.
hour now.
Well, you're welcome, but let me just thank you guys. I just stumbled across your podcast because I was sitting in Chris Cruz's chair the day after you were there, or 2 days after you were there.
Shop in
And and I'm sitting there, and I told him, I said, I've always been looking for, on my bucket list, a barbershop that people go to when they don't need a haircut.
Yeah.
And
That's his whole philosophy.
and it matched. And one of your first guests, Earl's, comes in.
Yeah.
I don't know Earl, but he's wearing a WSU shirt.
Yeah, he
So he's a
always
Coug.
does. Go Cougs.
So we started talking, and
Judy.
the next thing I know, it's like I'm Earl's best friend.
Yeah.
And
One of the best guys
so
ever.
it's. I left there. I went. And I said I got to look up this podcast.
Yeah, did you watch it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was one of our favorites.
It was awesome. But then I thought, well, they told me Earl was in one. So then I went back. I found Earl. Then I started working the way up. And I just want to thank you both. This is incredibly generous. It's not free. It's a gift to each of us that have had the pleasure to sit and visit with you, and to the community at large. So thank you both for that.
We're just lucky that it's, we're happy that it's resonating with people. And, not only is it helping, I hope, to connect people, but it's also really fun to have the family and the siblings or grandkids talk about, your 10 grandkids looking at your podcast. And
Like Grandpa's on the podcast.
it's fun. We get messages from kids and notes. And
We even got a message from somebody in another small state. I think it was in Minnesota, maybe. And she somehow stumbled upon it on YouTube, and it was like, I just love what you're doing. And I actually have like a small town podcast I created, but I love your vision of yours. And it was just so interesting.
It's so neat. Well, I'm going to tell you one more thing then, because when I was doing the Grandpa Project and considering it, one of the things that's on the to-do list, because my parents both passed away when I was 25 and 26. I'm 72 years old, so it's been a while. They weren't around for any of my grandkids. My oldest son was like a year old when the second one passed. They miss out on that, my grandkids. But you know what I'm doing now? I'm forgetting. I don't think I can remember their voices.
Oh.
I remember what they say and said, but I don't really hear their voice. So the project was going to be, I'm going to give grandpas a place to give their messages so that down the road somebody will know not only what they said, but what they sounded like. And that's part of this gift too.
I have a voicemail from my dad that I passed away in 2020, and it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I'll save that old phone.
Yeah, well, I think you have the technology around you to pull that off the phone and save it in a safe deposit box.
He was a pretty special guy, yeah. And then the great-grandkids, we often say, you're actually talking to them right now that aren't born yet. When you're long gone and you're great, that is cool. So it's been fun. It's been exciting, and I think we get as much out of it as anybody.
100%.
Well, bless your hearts. This is wonderful. Thank you so
fun.
much for having me.
Yeah. All right. Signing off. Small Towns Unscripted. One more time.